Hi, this is Jeff Gore, the UIC Global Learning Community and Department of English, and today we're going to talk about a couple tips for reading sonnets. Somewhere along the way you've probably learned that there are two kinds of sonnets. There's the type that are sometimes referred to as the Italian sonnets, modeled after the sonnets of Petrarch, and then sonnets that are referred to as the English sonnet, or sometimes even the Shakespearean sonnet. For many readers, this comes down to a division of the rhyme scheme, that the Italian sonnet is divided into an octave with 8 lines, and then a sestet with 6 lines, and the Shakespearean sonnet is divided into a collection of quatrains, 3 quatrains and a couplet, and usually for most readers this comes down to a question of just being able to match up their rhyme schemes. There's A, that spent rhymes with bent, wide rhymes with hide, and that continues down into the next part of the octave: spent, bent, present, prevent, wide, hide, chide, denied. And you see in the Shakespearean sonnet you have something that's kind of similar, but it's divided into these 4 parts: time, prime, night, white, leaves, sheaves, herd, beard. And you know, this is great for learning something about how the rhyme scheme works. But as far as getting into the heart of the poem, once you've learned that as a fact, you're kind of faced with asking the question, well, who cares? Where does this take me next? Now, I'm not going to read the whole poem to you, but what I want to show you is that this way of dividing the poem up into rhythmic units of the octave and the sestet is actually a way of looking at the different ideas as they develop in the poem. Now, I deliberately chose a poem that begins with the word when. And the reason I did that is because when you hear a when in a sentence, you're generally going to begin to anticipate that there's something that completes that idea, a then statement. And that's exactly what we have in this poem. Let's take a look at just the very beginning. The poem begins, "When I consider how my light is spent." Now, for those of you that know Milton's work, you know that Milton was going blind at this time of his life, and so what he's actually saying is, when I consider how I'm just about to go blind. And one of the big problems that Milton had during this time of his life is that he felt that one of the most important things of his life was actually to be able to express his talents in a way that would please God. And so the poem is going to have 2 parts. When I consider that I'm starting to go blind, and the second part is going to be the then part of it. It's going to say, how is it that he copes with that? Well, we're not going to read through the whole poem, but what I want to do is show you sort of the bird's eye view. When I consider how my light is spent, when I consider how I'm starting to go blind, I'm worried that the one talent for me as a writer is lodged with me useless. So then what am I going to do about it? And that's actually the structure for a lot of sonnets. Well, the second sonnet I'm going to show you is Shakespeare's Sonnet 12. And as we were saying earlier, there's 2 kinds of sonnets, but really, as I'm going to show you, they're doing the same thing. Rather than the 8 and 6 division like we saw in Milton's sonnets, we'll go ahead and divide this up into the 3 quatrains and a couplet. But the important thing is to try to use this to get that bird's eye view so you can get into a habit of seeing what it is you're supposed to look for with a sonnet. Now, just like with the Milton sonnet, this one's going to begin with a when, but it actually has that then, and that's going to be the perfect sort of turning point. In Italian, this is referred to as the volta. Now, again, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but if we just take a look at a couple of lines, you're going to see how that structure is actually at work. When I do count the clock that tells the time and see the brave day sunk in hideous night. Now, this is the theme throughout a lot of the early sonnets. It has to do with the fact that time goes on, and it's going to actually have to do with decay and the hideous night of death that all of us are going to face. Well, so the poet begins with that structure. When I see all these things, when lofty trees I see barren of leaves, which erst from heat did canopy over the herd. Well, so that's the first part of it. And then we get to that then statement. Then of thy beauty do I question make. That you too are going to be part of that whole decaying nature. that thou among the wastes of time must go. It's the same sort of structure as we saw in the Milton sonnet, that it's not so important about the rhyme scheme. I mean, yes, that is a rhythm that holds everything together. Time rhymes with prime, night rhymes with white, leaves rhyme with sheaves, etc., etc. But the important thing is dividing everything up like this, that when I count the clock that tells the time, time is going on forever, trees are all losing their leaves, then I start to worry about you. Now here's where the difference is, but it's a difference that's not so much a difference in this couplet that you have again down at the end. So you had your 4 plus 4 plus 4. It's not so important, again, the rhyme scheme. What's important is that you've got this grouping of ideas. So when I see all of nature decaying, then of thy beauty do I question make. And here's kind of the couplet, which sometimes in a sonnet is actually going to act as kind of a thesis statement. And nothing against time's scythe can make defense, save breed to brave him when he takes thee hence. So as you can see, there's nothing to do against time's scythe, save breed, except for to have children. And that's the theme that you see throughout many of the early sonnets, that nature is going to decay, you're going to decay, and the only thing that you can do is have children. So if we return to our earlier question of who cares, my answer should be you do. You do and I do, because it's not so much a question of what we're seeing as far as a rhyme scheme. The question is that we're getting something of an idea from a poem. That nature's going to decay, you're going to decay, and this makes me sad. So the one thing you should do is try to have children so that you can live on eternally. And that actually allows you to have sort of an idea of what's actually the meaning of the poem. Thanks a lot.